Yo, what's up guys? Time for Wind Tower. This was for me one of the easier ones, and I think this whole tower is relatively easy the moment that you know what kind of teams to use. You do need a whole bunch of net 5s though, but I think also a whole bunch of net 5s are kind of replaceable because there's a lot of pushbackers. There's a Ganymede, there's a Savannah, there's a Charlotte, there's CP, Smicer's pretty good, Jamira of course pretty good. I don't have a Lewis skilled up, so I was also using Jasun and some other units. I didn't have a few other units skilled up, but I'll mention those later. But stage 10, we have a additional violent proc, so therefore you want to rune everything swift if you want to try this on the best possible way. And this stage itself was just... First few stages are always not that difficult. There's just a lot of pushbacks, and with pushbacks... I would say that the wind stage in general took pretty long because you don't have the heavy damage dealers such as an Amber that just clears all of the waves or dots in the fire. There's not too many dotters in wind, so therefore it just takes a little bit longer, but it's not necessarily very difficult. There's not too much going on. You just push back. The fire units are sometimes a little bit hard to push back, but that's in most cases kind of just it. It just takes a little bit longer. And for me, this was actually the tower I had least amount of issues with. There are one or two issue floors which are on like 15, but that one I actually cleared on the first try as well by using a Wind Homunculus, which was actually very strong in that one. So in this case, yeah, we do have the normal things going on. It just takes a little bit of time. You just drop a lot of bombs, and you know how this stage works by now. It's just not too much going on. Jasun was a pretty good healer in this. Lewis would be better, I would say. But in the end, Jasun did pretty much just as well. I literally just autoed it at some point. Like, okay, it probably goes fine. It just takes like an insane amount of time. Nothing on my side was really doing that much damage. Also, Savannah, if you use Savannah, I would use Savannah on speed, attack, so you can actually armor break other things. I thought that, like, okay, I have attack buff, and then I would have enough attack compared to their defense, but apparently it was not enough, so speed attack is better than crit damage kind of stuff. Next stage is a Humble with a block beneficial effects. And in this case, block beneficial effects doesn't really matter. Sure, your Savannah doesn't work, but another unit that's insanely strong in here is Akamamir. Akamamir just does so freaking much damage. The skill 2 is enemy max HP scaling, same as Varamos, but the skill 3 is scaling from debuffs. So in general, there's just a lot going on for this unit to do a shit ton of damage. And actually clear the boss pretty well as well, so... Every time you see a Akamamir move, shit's just dead, right? That went super fast. So then the next stage is a Wunsa with a attack increase of 15 for every damage received. A little bit more annoying, but I used the exact same team. There's still a lot of pushbacks on this. Akamamir still does an insane amount of damage. Hitting the fire units was a little bit more difficult because it's harder to push them back. It's harder to armor break them, debuff them in the first place, but... This team was pretty solid in general. This team actually worked out pretty well. The moment you get past that, it's not as difficult. If they take 1 or 2 turns, it's not that bad. Also in here, you just have to make sure that they don't take too much turns, and then it's fine. One thing you have to keep in mind, Akamir actually gives heal block right now, and the heal block was super crucial at this position, because at some point I noticed I wasn't pushing it back, and it nearly killed my whole team there. And actually the second life of the Savannah cleared it. But because of that heal block, I actually survived, which is a buff that came from Akamir at some point. Then the next stage went in, once again, same team. That's why I would say that this was... Did I go same team? No, this is where I switched my staff first. So that's kind of where I said where this floor was very easy for me. I didn't have to switch that much all the time. Normally I rerune a lot between those stages. But in this case, I didn't have to rerune as much. I was just using... the same team for like 3-4 floors in a row, which is super chill in general. You can see the Akamamir once again going like super ham. And I really think Akamamir is one of the better units in here. Sure, the rest are all net 5s. You kind of want to have those net 5s if you want to make it work. But I would say if you don't have a Chunk Pung, you could still make it work with like a Charlotte, or you could still make it work with a bunch of other units. It's not that you need to have Chunk Pung or need to have Savannah. It just makes it a lot faster if you do. But there are other units out there as well. Then the next stage is a crit damage 200, which is once again a Akamamir stage. Akamamir was doing so well with all of this, so... I would say that all of the other units were kind of replaceable till this far. Like, sure, you need like 2 or 3 of those pushback units, but I would say Wind has about like 5 pushback units that you could choose from. So There's a bunch of options. Also, Jemire, it helps a lot to have Jemire, but I don't think it is a must to have Jemire. So I would say that Wind has a lot of options between like pushback units because you still have the Charlotte. You could even use the net for Ursa, which is the Asura unit, which is pretty strong. And yeah, there's just a lot of options in here. You could even Hathor if you really want to take it slow and that kind of stuff. But yeah, Akamamir, every time you see a Akamamir move, shit just dies. Like, everything is dead. Then the more annoying stage for most people is block beneficial effects and reflect 3000. Plus, you have Noras at the end. So this is definitely a Genny Hathor. If you don't have Genny Hathor for this, I don't think you're going to clear this. So I actually went in. This does take quite a while. I was using Bernard because it just helps out a little bit more. Genny and Hathor is Smicer really a must? I think Smicer helps out a lot as well. If you don't have the Smicer, you definitely will struggle a little bit with other things. I'm not sure if I switched out this team later because I was getting a lot of hits. I think I wasn't doing enough healing. Yeah, that's where I switched out the Bernard. Yeah, that's where I went for Jasoon. Only thing is you have block beneficial effects, so in the end, Jasoon didn't really work, and I was thinking like, maybe I should go for the, I think it's called Nobelong, the Wind Cat, which is a healer plus also can be hitting on sleeps, plus can sleep itself as well. So that's definitely a unit you could use. But actually the Homunculus on a damage build with Violent and then also some accuracy to land the armor breaks worked out pretty well. It still takes a long time. In this fight I was kind of like, oh, am I gonna be out of time? Because mainly the Rebecca's, the fire units in here take a long time to clear. I would definitely say if you're using Smicer, I would drop the bombs on those and then drop the hits on the other things. You can't really use the Bomber Taurus that much because Taurus would go for skill 1 and skill 1 is a big hit on itself because that's straight up 9k. You could maybe work around with it. It is maybe an option for that as Bomber, but Smicer in the end definitely did help out. I would say Jasoon was a pretty good healer in here, but I would say that a Lewis or something like that it doesn't give it the shield, so maybe it's a little bit worse as well. So maybe Jasoon was actually not that bad in the end. But there's other healers out there that can kind of work. So I was getting kind of low on turns left, and everyone in chat was like, yo, you're not going to have enough turns on this one. And I was like, maybe so. But at the final stage, you do have to land everything on all of the Noras, otherwise you're going to be fucked. But the Homunculus does a very good amount of damage on this boss. Like, every time you see the Homunculus move, Homunculus just hits for an insane amount. And that was just really good damage. So the Homunculus actually made it for me that this stage was a lot easier. And I actually cleared it on the first try, whereas this stage was classified as one of the more difficult stages for this whole thing. Okay, next stage is Applied Immunity, and we have a Fire Chance in there, so you could rerune everything to Swift or Despair. I would say Despair is very good in this position if you have those. And you could go for a Robo, but in most cases, people just go Tiana on this one, I would say. Because with the Tiana, you don't have that issue that you have to land on everyone, that you actually can make it work, because that's just another added RNG factor. But yeah, in this case, I think I kept everything still on Vio, and I didn't really rerune for this one, so this one was, in the end, not that hard. You just have to make sure that you stun enough. I think my Chunk Pong was on Despair, but once again, Akamamir stuns working out insanely well, so yeah, there's pretty much Akamamir in all net 5s. That's definitely true. But I would say that there's a lot of choices between net 5s. I would say that the most unmissable unit for this whole stage, or this whole tower in the first place, would be Ganymede. I think all of the others you can kind of replace. It's kind of doable. But Ganymede is just so impactful with the Ventilate and everything. I think that you have to keep in mind here, which I actually kind of did wrong, is that the Lucifers give pretty, like, Lucifer passive normally doesn't give that much bar, whereas this thing does give quite some bar, in this case, if you AoE hit all the time. So the Akamamir in this one was actually, wait, I think I filled this one by the Sliver of Health. Yep, I filled this one by the Sliver of Health. So I switched it out for another pushbacker, and then mainly because of Akamamir S2 just doing too much damage. Imagine too much damage being a thing. But yeah, it literally did too much damage and therefore gave too much bar to the other units. So in this case, I just added in a Saf. Could have been the Charlotte once again. Could have been, well, pretty much any unit that is a pushback on Wind. And there's quite a bunch of pushbackers on Wind. So in this case, the only damage that I actually did was the Jemire damage, and then it doesn't get that much bar. It was a little bit easier. Next stage is one of the more interesting / annoying ones as well. We have inability effects are immune, and we have continuous damage are immune. So you have to do this with pushbacks, but there's also double Leo, double Ragdoll at the Talisha stage. So you have to go for an Oblivion unit. So for this stage, I actually changed up a few things. I added in a chunk punk just for more pushbacks. And I made my whole team 15 crit rate. So the 15 crit rate was actually pretty important because you don't want to be critting on those ragdolls. The stages with the... yeah, this stage just takes a little bit of time. It's not that bad, but... it is kind of annoying a little bit. But the final stage is a little bit more difficult. I nearly died there. So you do need everything pretty tanky. But this fight was kind of wonky. You try to Oblivion both Leos, and you don't care about Oblivioning the Ragdolls. That's the main thing that you want to be doing for this stage. And the moment that that is going, the moment that 2 Leos are both Oblivioned, then you will actually lap them in speed by quite a bit. Since you have super low crit rate, the Ragdolls care a little bit less. Sure, 15 crit rate is bound to crit at some point, which is a little bit dangerous. This fight is definitely looking kind of dangerous itself. But yeah, this is just kind of what you have to deal with. I would say that the team with the chunk punk felt a lot better for me personally than the team with the double the Lucky Madman did the team of the double Oblivion, so he also used a Ayunu as Oblivion unit, but I wasn't liking it that much. So I'd rather just CC and then do damage and then just make it work from there. So next stage is an El Sharion with immunity at the start, and we also have a chance of stunning. Very easy stage. So you do have Gyus at the start. That could be a little bit of annoying, but you do have extra chance of stunning. You have the Akamamir that just kills everything in like 3 hits. And then, yeah, shit just got easy from there. So once again, I would say pretty easy stage. So far, I would say that the 15 and the 17 are a little bit more difficult. All of the other stages aren't too difficult, so let's speed this up. These units all do nothing, especially if you have extra chance of stunning. And then this stage is also just a free stage. None of these units do anything. None of these units will ever get a chance to take a turn or anything. And I had to open the door or something. Oh no, wait, it started raining. But yeah, this was definitely one of those easier stages as well. Then this stage was a little bit wonky. We have apply immunity and then also immune to cooldown increasing effects. So you can't really prevent those Abelios and those Valajules from getting any skills in. I would say definitely a lot of Despairs would help out a lot on this one. So this was my team for that. I used the Ursa. Ursa is also a very good pushback. It has pushback on the S2 and dots on the S3. You definitely want to go for the dots here because in this team, I think it's best to go for a no healer team. But then you have to kill the lizards by dots because they do actually have a reflect. In this one, you actually have to be careful that you land all of the skills because those water Kiaras, I don't even know what they're called, they do have that skill where they guaranteed crit on wind. If they use that skill, 1 unit of you is very, very much dead. There's no other words to say it. You're super, super dead. Final stage is a little bit wonky. You have to play around with trying to dot as much. I kind of did that wrong. But you want to dot as much as possible in this fight. And with those dots, you can clear all of those units out at some point for getting through the Abelio stage. So in this case, I think it's better to go for an S2 first rather than S3. Because the main thing what you want to do is just dots. And with those dots, you can actually clear that the Abelios don't get their passive in. And that's kind of what you are aiming for. Plus, you have to stun the Valajules at all cost all the time. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And therefore, those units on Despair will definitely help you out quite a bit as well. Or you have to hope for a lucky proc the moment that they actually do trigger the stuff. So you have to keep in mind, Abelio, it triggers at 40%. In this case, that Abelio got under. But we have one Abelio that's above still. So the moment that I triggered that Abelio, it would be bad. So I was too careless with those over there. And we still had the one Abelio not being triggered, I think. So, yep. That was like a little tricky. So you definitely, that was pretty much a full reset of the fight. Doesn't mean you instantly have to leave this fight if that happens, because I still went fighting on, because there are still a lot of options for this team to go right. I think my Ursa was Despair in this case, and my Changpong was also Despair. So we pretty much got a full reset of that fight. And this is probably just a fight you have to do a few times to get good RNG rotations. And there's pretty much nothing else than that. It's not super difficult, but it's pretty annoying to get that good RNG rotation in. And you just have to keep trying to get enough stuns, enough debuffs, enough everything. So in this case, we do have a lot of those dots on the Abelios. We don't have too much going on the Valajules yet. Valiju actually went for skill 1 over there, which was kind of lucky. If it went for skill 3, it was instantly done. Moment that Valijus go for skill 3, that's where it gets a little bit more tricky, especially if I'm lower on HP. So in this case, we do have a lot of dots, but every skill that I'm doing, I'm kind of checking like, okay, what should move next and could move next? Chungpong was surviving by the sliver of health. You definitely do need your Chungpong in here still. So trying to get my stuns back in, trying to get all of the attack bar absorbs in, trying to get all of the damage in. Okay, this is where we have the Abelios. If they take a turn naturally right now, they will get themselves below the passive rate. The only thing is, that was a perfect moment for the Abelios to take a turn, and then for the Chungpong to move next. So you kind of are waiting for a rotation like that. That's kind of what you try to force. Get the dots in the moment you bring the Terranese to low enough HP that you have an instant follow-up with one of your pushback units, and then you can make it work from there. So that's kind of the thing that you're aiming for. Have to keep in mind he comes back with the bear form, so you don't waste all of your skills. You have to keep some skills alive just for the sake of being able to clear that. But this is definitely a little bit of a wonky fight. Wasn't the hardest out there, but it was definitely a pretty wonky fight for itself. And that was a clear on 19. Okay, and then my stage for 20. I didn't have max skill ups on the middle pudding thingy. I did have to level an Arcasis for it. I didn't have Arcasis. Arcasis, the main thing what you want to do with Arcasis, especially in this first stage where you don't do too much damage, you want to continuously drop skill once from Arcasis to Arcasis, or whatever her name is, Arcana, Arcasis, something in the long stuff. I don't even know. But she has a skill of skill 1 dots of 3 turns, which is pretty good. Activation rate, not that great, but it does provide quite some damage. Because these units all the time go for their healing and for their shields and all of that whatnot. So it's a little bit annoying, and that's, I think, the best way to clear it out. And then afterwards, you do need a Terranese in here because it is definitely not a safe stage where you could say like, oh, I'll just go out without Reviver. Eladriel could be a Reviver as well, but I think Terranese does a better job at this in general. Because it also gives the defense buff, and at some point it can also armor break. So this stage is definitely a very lengthy stage, and the damage comes from the unit on the right, the String Master, and also from the reflex that you put from your pure vanilla cookie thingy, whatever it is. Pudding Princess in this case. But yeah, as you can see, super long fight. You try to kill it with dots, that's it. Then you have the Guillaumes next to Varisas. Once again, pretty long fight. Just make sure that you don't hit the Guillaumes the moment that you have glancing. But first you kill the Varisas, and then you just slowly dot them down. Try to keep all of your HP up as much as possible. I actually tried this with a Wind Hacker. I thought that the Wind Hacker might actually do some interesting stuff because he has the buff block. It is nice for the first 2 waves, but then at the boss he doesn't really add too much besides... yeah, maybe dying at some point, but often not even getting focused. So that was a little bit annoying. But this is definitely one of those super long stages. It was the stage that took me a little bit of time to actually get through. But yeah, then we have this thing and it's done. So then the final boss, what you want to do is try to get as much shields up as possible all the time. Dot the right tower and just try to get as many dots in on the right tower so it will be cleared fast. Also, you kill the right tower. And you want to keep the skill 3 from Jemire, which I actually missed in this case. I think I did it too early. The moment that he starts armor breaking. The moment that there's armor break, you definitely want to go for those cleanses in. And besides that, you just... Oh yeah, you give defense buff all the time. You make sure that all of these things are still rocking, rolling all the time. You don't want to hit the boss too much. Especially not if you're glanced. I think that was the mechanic. Like if you're glanced and you hit the boss, you'll get like some extra power or bullshit. So make sure that every time that you do an AoE skill that you're not glanced. So in this case, I do have glancing on me. You don't use the AoE skill. You just start killing that right tower. And glancing is given by the left crystal. So you first just kill the crystals. Mainly you just kill the right crystal because the right crystal is the dangerous one. And this boss just kind of kills itself from reflex because your pudding is just doing so much damage from reflex. And that's just the way to go. That's kind of the thing, like the boss is just killing itself on reflex. And that's all there is to it. So that's interesting boss for this one. I would say absolutely Wind was the most easy tower for me out there. I would only say that a few stages were a little bit wonky. But definitely not stages where I got hard stuck. It took me a little bit longer because I had to build the units for Wind. Because I didn't have the 4 stars. I didn't have the Adriana build. Or is it Adriana? No, Angela. Angela's the pure vanilla cookie Wind. I didn't have that one built. I didn't have Arcasis built. I just had to build a bunch of units that took a little bit of time. But in general, I would say Wind was the easiest dungeon out there because Akamamir is that strong. Homunculus actually did a very good job at a stage that was pretty difficult. And then, yeah, the 19 is just a little bit wonky. That's about it. Easy stage for me. Guys, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you, as always, in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the Dungeon Guide Archive and the Video Guide Archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.